So, in today's woke news, we got Dr. Phil is getting a redemption period and is getting more based as the time comes. So, Phil went on a freaking rampage these last few weeks, and well, he's getting down now, sir, with the actual situations that are happening right now. From reporting with the border crisis, with kids coming back with numbers and sending them to known prostitution rings or sweatshops. And I mean, oh man, sir.
My understanding is that you went to the southern border. Now you're saying that you're going to give people facts. What did you take away from that experience, and what kind of reporting are you going to be bringing back from that experience?
I'll tell you a fact I took away. I talked to the head of all the border guards down there, the head of the union. I asked him straight up, kids are coming over the border with numbers written on them, phone numbers and addresses. Do we check those out? He said, well, we call them. Is it possible that we're sending them into known prostitution rings or sweatshops? He said, it's not possible, it is absolute. We are using American tax dollars to ship children into known prostitution
All
and
children or
sweatshops.
some children?
Well, who knows?
Okay.
We don't know. I said, are you?
So what kind of checking do they do? So
They
'cause you
call
said-
the number
Uh-huh,
and say, do you know about this child? They say, yes. Will you receive them when they come? Yes. I said, is it possible that that's a prostitution ring? He said, we know enough to know that in a number of cases, it has turned out to be absolute sex ring. It has turned out to be an absolute sweatshop.
And this boy, Dr. Phil, goes to The View and rampage and demolishes these middle-aged women with facts, sir, and talks about the impact of the pandemic management negatively affecting most innocent and youngs among us. In other words, kids, sir. One that gets the smoke is Whoopi Goldberg. and you know this woman's crazy. So she continues to fearmonger with, the whole COVID. And Dr. Phil lays it down, sir, with pure facts. And at the end of the day, you can't argue with concrete facts, people. And Dr. Phil laid down the facts as solid as they come.
When they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being abused and sexually molested, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers with no way to watch, and referrals dropped 50 to 60%. So
There was also a pandemic going on, and they were trying to save
They were
children's
trying to
lives
save
as
kids'
well.
lives. Remember, we know a lot of folks who died during this. So it wasn't, people weren't laying
Not
around
school
eating
children.
bond, but, well, you know what? We're lucky. Maybe we're lucky they didn't, because we kept them out of the places that they could be sick, because no one wanted to believe we had an issue.
Are you saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Well, Phil, we don't even have time to talk about it now, man. But thanks for coming. The new book is called We've Got Issues, and it is out tomorrow.
And you already know they hate the fact that the crowd clapped when they didn't have to. So just in case, I said increase, I don't know why. But just in case you don't know, Hollywood is fake as hell, and these shows always have like the fake applause sign that lights up, and it benefits the talk show host. But this clap was very genuine, since everyone clapped before he even finished his sentence, because they know he's right, because the facts will set you free. The truth is, the pandemic messed everyone up, and the children were robbed from their youth. And in the end of the day, the children got it the worst, and that's all that matters at the end. And it didn't end there. Dr. Phil also went to freaking Joe Rogan, out of all places. And I gotta say, man, that episode was freaking dope. And he talks about the radical leftism is destroying common sense, and talks about the defund the police people weren't talking to the people they were protecting. No, instead, they're activists, and people are starting to get fed up. And now we have the middle of America finally waking up. And I mean finally, bro. Woo!
And you need money for that.
Of course you do.
You can't have defund the police and expect things to get better.
No.
The whole idea behind that is so insane.
It was, and let me tell you, the people that were yelling defund the police weren't speaking for the people they were protecting. In those neighborhoods, they didn't want less police.
No.
They didn't want less police. It was their businesses that were getting robbed, their businesses were getting burned down. They didn't want less police. And it's so often that these activists, and I call it tyranny of the fringe. I've written this new book we'll talk about, I'm sure, in due time. But I talk about tyranny of the fringe. These activists aren't speaking for the people they say they're speaking for. They're speaking for themselves. They like the camera. They like the attention. They're not speaking for the groups they supposedly are speaking for.
And it works. That's what's crazy. It's effective. And in this day and age, when it's attached to something like the idea of being a progressive or being a good person, being on the left, being a kind person, you go along with these things, and the next thing you know, you're supporting the wildest of the leftists. You're supporting Antifa. You're turning a blind eye to violent thugs. And this is how screwed up everything's gotten just over the last few years. It seems like 10 years ago, this is not possible.
No, and it's accelerating and not decelerating yet, but I'm beginning to sense that there's a pushback.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think they've made a serious miscalculation. They pushed so hard and so long that they've started to wake up middle America to the point that they're saying, wait a minute, what?
And then we tripled down on Canada not having, parental rights for their own kids. In other words, the government has finally say on what your kids think and do. And that scary thing being that essentially Dr. Phil says that the U.S. is next. And Dr. Phil gets to the point and talks about when one person is transitioning and starts spreading because kids jump into bandwagons. And when you do transition, it's not reversible again. Come on. They tell you can always go back, but no, you can't, dude. You genetically modify, bro. You screw, which sucks. And it's a really sensitive subject, but it's better letting kids know now than when they get older and it's too late. Once you're 18, you want to do that, it's all you, bro. But not the little kids. Leave the kids alone.
Do you think it's because there's people that are queer or LGBT, whatever, and they want other people to be a part of their group?
Dr. Phil went into the other part that I think is just totally fascinating about this, how it's become a social contagion. They now know that when one girl, an actual girl at a school, starts transitioning to be a boy, which isn't even, it's not gender affirming, it's the least affirming thing you could possibly do, chopping off someone's genitals, that it then starts spreading to the other kids at that school. It's wild. Take a look.
What do you think is behind it, though? Like, how did this, if this is so contrary to the way most people feel, what do you think is behind it?
I think a lot of it is owing to social media platforms and the internet. I think this is what I'm talking about when I say the activists, I don't think speak for the community at large. I think they get an agenda that they're pushing, and I think they really get wrapped up in this, and it gets a lot of oxygen on the internet. It gets a lot of oxygen on social media platform. Now, they say there's no social contagion here, but the girls that are claiming to be transgender, that percentage has gone up. Some reports say it's gone up 800%, 1,000% over the last several years, and they say, well, that's because they feel more comfortable talking about it now. I think there is a social contagion effect, so people jump on the bandwagon, and if it's for a short period of time, but they've done things that can't be reversed, I think that's really tragic.
And since Dr. Phil is on a freaking rampage this last week and becomes based as the days come, it's no surprise a few woke people start trying to give him the, you're a Republican, so you an alt-right, racist bandwagon talks. And I'm like, yikes, bro. You guys still talk like 2016. It's crazy that still in 2024, people still act like it's 2016 when people thought because you speak with facts and actual knowledge and not your feelings, you must be some kind of racist bigot. Bruh. By default. It's like, bro, chill out. In 2024, most people realize that this was all brainwashing from the 2016 elections, and It baffles me how effective it is. Most sheep these days. And if you still believe that, hey, I hate to tell you, bro, you probably a sheep. And at this point, I know that smart people simply tend to become conservative. Not saying that left are all dumb. That's not true. There's a lot of smart people on left or right. But when it comes with this ideology thing, it's really kind of obvious that by default, that's just factual. Okay, so there's a reason why all the people with mental problems tend to go to the Fruit Loops and Cocoa with the Puffs side on the left. And anyways, I'm already going on a tangent. Dr. Phil gets to You're Not in Our Side and Trump Derangement Syndrome talk by Mr. David Pakman. Here.
You know, I'm very interested to speak to you today because in preparation for our interview, I've been watching some of the Fox News appearances, looking at the book, etc. I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se. You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because I am so not political, you can't even believe it.
And so I don't want to make this where I tell you about how political all the stuff you say is, but the reason why I say it is a lot of the language in the book and when you talk about issues like immigration and culture and others, it seems as though it alludes to going back to the good old days, individual decisions in the style that many Republicans now talk about with regard to schooling and parenting, etc. But you're saying it's just not the case.
And Dr. Phil gets to the point and speaks with facts and says that the nuclear family is being attacked, which he's right. I mean, there's nothing else to it. It is.
If you really think about raising a family in America, whether it's now or 50 years ago or 20 years down the road, we still have to keep our eye on what I think are core issues in America. And I think the backbone of America is the family unit. I really think that if we have strong families, if we have strong family values, and I think that our families in America, as you've heard me say and read me say, are under attack.
And he also talks about how crazy people are and that they are trying to erase American history, which is very true. Where built a statue of Floyd, which was a bad guy, and even put a freaking gun on a pregnant lady's stomach. I get the whole thing again. Yes, the officer deserves it, but it's like, okay, but you already saw what happened to Little Tokyo and stuff, man. All that stuff that happened. Did the good things happen after that? No, it was all just looting and stuff. Most of the people, they didn't even care. They were just doing an excuse just to steal stuff. But we're willing to destroy a George Washington or any ancient statue that's there because of history, and explains it so well with I can never say this word, presentism. So an example with like a speeding ticket, that's what Mr. Dr. Phil, I keep saying Mr. Dr. Phil. When Dr. Phil talks about it, yes, I'm horrible at talking. But this is what Dr. Phil says. He says it better than my dumb ass.
We've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family, trying to rewrite history. And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history, we want to change what kids are being taught in history, we want to change biology, we want to change all of the things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
You're not in agreement with those who want to minimize the tragedy and brutality of slavery.
Which is few and far between, right? Which is basically non-existent. This is a made-up talking point from left.
But you also want to keep the school names. If a school is named after a slave owner, you're also okay with that because it will remind us and we will learn from it. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're oversimplifying what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're wanting to change American history to pretend that these people did not exist, and you want to measure them by today's yardstick rather than the yardstick at the time, that's what is referred to as presentism. And that's like saying, okay, you're going to drive through a neighborhood and the speed limit is 20. And you drive through that neighborhood doing 20, and then they come along and say, you know what, we're going to change the speed limit to 10, and we're going to give you a ticket for speeding when the speed limit was 20. It's now 10, but you weren't speeding when you were doing 20, but now it's 10. We're going to give you a retroactive ticket for doing what was acceptable at the time. That's called presentism. We're going to take what was done back at the time, pull it up into the current time, and condemn you for not knowing what was going to be acceptable 200 years later than when you did it. And I think that is really narcissistic and arrogant and rewriting history instead of letting people learn from the mistakes that were made in America and that we need to learn from so we don't make those mistakes again.
Man, sir. I started to love seeing Dr. Phil destroy all these woke people. And again, this isn't even a conservative thing. It's just common sense. But again, we're in the point that if you disagree with the woke left, everything else is labeled conservative or alt-right or whatever. It's sad because it definitely shows that the woke left is crazy and it's becoming a cult now, and it's only gonna get worse as time comes. Luckily, we got the Mr. Dr. Phil talking about topics like this. Mr. David Ranks talks about, the drop in, church membership going below the 50% mark and how that's actually hurting the family unit and how our birth rate is starting to go down as well.
It is a concern to me. I think we've seen church membership drop below the 50% mark for the first time in our country's history. And I think that that's a problem for a variety of reasons. And one of them being that that's one of the times that families tend to spend quality time together. It's time that they put their phones down. It's time that they usually got together and would go do something as a unit and focus on values that were constructive to the family. There was often meditation time involved. There was often discussions about what was discussed in church that day. They often had Sunday dinner together afterwards and spent quality time like they did no other time during the day. And I think it also is a product of our lessened birth rate, which has dropped because a lot of people join church when they have children because they want their child to be baptized or christened or whatever. And the fact that we've seen our birth rate drop to around 1.6 from 2.1, which is necessary to sustain our infrastructure right now, is a problem. And it seems that that's one of the main reasons that church membership has dropped off. There's fewer kids to go get baptized, christened, or whatever, so people have less reason to go to church.
And then they talk about seeing crime rates declining with church states declining, which it is true, but not in the liberal cities. But of course, he's not going to say that because Dr. Phil knows that his audience isn't, the other side. But yeah, other places, yeah, they're flourishing. But then you go to like blue states in California, dude, the nuclear family is getting destroyed. Less and less people are having kids, because it's so expensive. Most people can't take care of themselves. Then we got the Bidenomics, and it's like, bro, we can't take care of ourselves. We can't have kids. So I understand why. It makes, it's just everything comes together. But again, we got Mr. Dr. Phil laying it down. So yeah, Dr. Phil is freaking everywhere now because he has a book coming out after, finishing his Dr. Phil show after 31 freaking seasons. And he's starting up his entire news entertainment TV network that looks like it's gonna talk about everything considered controversial. in these days, because we got a bunch of snowflakes now, which is, he's killing it like he is in the interviews, bro. I want to watch that. Heck yeah. So I'm sold, and I'm glad to see the change for once. Now we have Dr. Phil exposing everything, and we have Tucker Carlson giving us news that isn't part of the woke media, and it's looking like Dr. Phil is filling up certain little spots as well. I don't know how he is. I know he used to work with Oprah and stuff, but at the same time, at least at this part, I agree with him, and I'm glad, because he also did do some shows that were like kind of messed up, I'll be honest. But as regardless, I'm looking at this right now, and I love what I'm seeing. So with all that, can I get a... Oh, man, sir. Who would have known Dr. Phil is based? If you disagree, I love to hear something that I'm missing or that I don't know, because I am a dumbass, all right? I'm not going to be here and pretend to be like the super educational guy or whatever. I got a freaking shirt, bro, whatever. But let me know. And if you made it this far, bro, give me a like. And if you like the dumbass things I say, bro, subscribe. And that'll be all. Chinmonmon out. Damn, I'm sick.